Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Dufrain and Tesco Bank webinar session about analytics as a product. Today, we're going to talk about building value and scalable data solutions. Before we start kicking off and I talk about what the session's going to be covering, we'll do just a round of intros. So my name's Bal Lola. I'm Head of Delivery Excellence here at Dufrain. I've been with the company for about 7 months now, 7.5, I think, actually. And my background's predominantly within delivery and consulting, and I've been doing that for probably about 2 decades now. And joining me today is the Tesco Bank team, who I'll hand over to introduce themselves, and Sean Kenny, who's also a member of the Dufrain team. I'll start with the Tesco Bank team. Gwyl, would you like to go first?
Sure, thanks, Bal. So I'm Gwyl Morrison. I'm Head of Data Science at Tesco Bank. So my team contribute ML and AI skills into our agile delivery model within our analytics department. I've been with Tesco Bank just short of 3 years now. And in my career, I've worked across the whole spectrum of data analytics from customer insight through MIBI analytics and most recently data science.
Amazing, thank you. Laura, you're next on my screen.
Great, thanks, Bal. So hi, everyone. Laura Kester. I'm the Head of Decision Science here at Tesco Bank. Been here a few years. My responsibility is largely for the product development and management function within analytics, and my background is generalized analytics, credit risk, and product management.
Amazing, thank you. Chris, you're next on my screen. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, of course. So hi folks, my name is Chris Russell. I'm the Head of Pricing at Tesco Bank. So within Tesco Bank, we have a centralised commercial pricing function. So my team manage end-to-end pricing for credit cards, loans and savings products. And my background, I've been in retail banking for 10 years, doing various kind of commercial and pricing roles.
Amazing, thank you. And finally, Sean.
Thanks, Bal. So hi, everyone. I'm Sean Kenny, Client Director here at Dufrain. I'm actually coming up to my 10 years with the company, and in that time, I've worked with analytics teams across various different sectors. My role today is to bring some industry context, share some personal reflections on why so many organisations are stepping away from traditional analytics as a service models and moving much more towards a product-led approach.
Thank you. So today's session, for all the participants that are joining us, it's going to be less about slides and more about us actually sharing practical lessons and talking about how you actually embed a product mindset in analytics. We'll explore how we move from analytics as a service to analytics as a product and help organisations deliver measurable and scalable value, especially citing what the wonderful Tesco Bank team has actually been able to achieve, who are joining us today. There is a questions section, so throughout the session, if you would like to add or ask us any questions, if you pop them in the box, we'll do a Q&A session at the end and leave some time to pick some of those up. But we'll be sharing some of our insights, and I'll start with, just for those to kick us off who don't maybe know, what is traditional analytics and why is it no longer fit for purpose? If I come to you first, Gwyl, with that.
Yeah, sure. So the traditional approach to analytics, as Sean mentioned just there, is something I'd call analytics as a service. So in that model, what tends to happen is that the business have a requirement for a piece of analysis or a piece of insight that then gets packaged up as a request that goes into the analytics team, and it goes into the top of the hopper for prioritization. And what tends to happen is that that request sits there in the prioritization funnel until the analytics team have sufficient capacity and it comes to the top of the pile. Then that request is turned around and the output of that analysis or the piece of insight is then sent out to the business. Now, that model has served us well for a number of years, but the problem with it is that time to insight tends to be quite slow, and there can also be issues around things like misalignment priorities. So there could be a request from the business that's super high priority from their point of view, but actually is lower priority for the analytics team. So it can cause frustration amongst stakeholders and business users to have to wait for a piece of analysis that maybe there's a critical business decision that's hanging off the back of. So it's that responsiveness and that time to insight that's the real kind of disadvantage of that more traditional approach. And actually, we've got a better way of doing things, which is analytics as a product.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Laura, how have you find that change impact your team?
Yeah, so I think just to sort of elaborate on a few of Gwyl's points there, I think the old model, the old analytics model, it tends to be the analytics team tends to be a data or an insight delivery function we need X. Okay, we'll deliver you X. It tends to be a lot of repetitive output. So can you provide me this this insight report every single month in this format, and we'll do it, and we produce it, and it just goes out every single month. It's kind of a factory, right? And I think as well that you end up with a lot of fixed resourcing because you have this sort of factory mentality. You have different specialisms in your team, and you have that sort of fixed resourcing model within those specialisms. It's very reactive. So as Gwyl said, you tend to be sort of a hopper. You're bringing in those requirements, you action them, you ship them back out again. There's often not a consideration for reproducibility and scalability or reusability. It's often, this is my requirement, you fulfill that requirement, and you move on. What I would say is this is not usually out of desire from the team. So a lot of the time, the teams really do want to simplify things. They want to automate. They would rather have a toolkit. I mean, I don't think it's anyone's favorite job to be cranking data over and over. People like to do the interesting stuff. But it's more about the setup of the team just isn't, you know, these teams aren't really set up for that sort of scalability and automation. So it's something that teams just have to deal with. So, you know, it's been a really interesting change to look at how we move to this analytics as a product where there's really a mindset, and our team vision and our strategy is really about taking a second to think, is there a way we can do this better? What actually is the core of what this stakeholder is asking for? What are they trying to get to? Is it likely going to be something that we're going to get asked for again on a monthly basis? Is it something that changes slightly every month? So we need to build that into the solution, a bit of flexibility that we can adapt to those requirements changing month to month as the market changes, as the business changes. So it's really about sort of taking a bit of a step back rather than being a factory, being a kind of partner with the business, to take a step back and think, okay, what is it you actually want? What are you likely to need for the future? And what can we build for you that's going to make your life easier, not just today, but ongoing? So yeah, I feel like that is sort of a really interesting methodology and a really great way to operate as a team. It helps us build better relationships with stakeholders, but it also means that we have more interesting work for the teams. They can work on building some really cool solutions rather than just being a data churner.
Thank you for that, Laura. Apologies for everyone that noticed me disappear. I'm not sure what happened there. Coming back to that change then, and actually how that enabling and empowering the business to actually make more of those decisions. As the receiver of those changes, Chris, how has that impacted you and your team?
Yeah, it's been kind of fundamental in the way that we do things. I think what I would say, just to kind of start off, is that I genuinely think a really good commercial team has some level of analytical capability embedded within it. And I've been quite fortunate that my team at Tesco Bank's always kind of had that capability. But where the new analytics model has really helped is it's given us the tools to actually do more of that digging and analysis ourselves. So a bit more of a self-serve model. Where it really benefits us is probably just touching on the points that Gwyl and Laura have already mentioned, but speed of delivery is a key thing for us. So previously, we would have to put a request into the analytics function, and it would get prioritised with a whole host of other things that are going into that funnel. Whereas we've got a business need where we're reacting to a live market, so we need answers quickly. Having the tools at our fingertips to use ourselves gets us the answers quicker, essentially. And the second piece is depth. So what you tend to find, or I tend to find, is that when you get a bit of an analytical request, you see the outputs from it, it immediately starts spurring other questions, which in the old model with analytics would require further reprioritization work. If we've got the tools that when we see some sort of outcome, we can actually dig a bit further and go, oh, that's interesting, how can we get to the bottom of that? So having everything within my area with the solutions that Gwyl and Laura build for us really helps us get under the skin of the performance of the business.
That's fantastic. And I think actually having that ability to also self-serve and do your own investigation really shows some of the value that actually you can have through that change. What challenges have you faced as a receiver of the change at all?
So to completely contradict myself, what I would say is speed, but in a slightly different way. So the analytics teams need time to build the solutions for us. which is great because we obviously need them, but we've still got the immediate questions and challenges that we need to try and address. So it's trying to balance up the bigger build work with some of the more immediate analytical requests to help us keep the business moving. So that's definitely one. And then two is probably having the right skill sets embedded within the teams. So I think my team's fortunate in that we're a bit further forward in the maturity curve in terms of the skill set within my team. But I know some other areas of the business don't have the right skill sets to drive into data. So they do rely a bit more heavily on the traditional analytics setup. So I think it's key that each business area that feeds into the analytics function is set up in the right way to help this new setup succeed.
Thank you for that. The maturity and actually being able to accept the change as it comes to you, I think, is probably something that a lot of the people on the call today will have some curiosities about. Maybe I'll come to you, Laura. How would a business deal with that change, and what kind of mitigations and levers do they have to be able to lean into that?
Yeah, great question. I think, I am one of the biggest advocates. It is a journey, and I think we need to be honest. We need to be honest about that there is a transition period, and it isn't something that just happens overnight. So I think the first thing, just alluding to what Chris said before, is it takes time. We're trying to build these solutions for the future. These are, big, robust systems that take time to build. But in the same time, Chris still has his questions. He still needs to run his business. He still needs to price those products and get them shipped out. So we have to kind of manage both of those two things at the same time. You can't just stop the business running while you build. So there really needs to be a transition. So what we've had to do is really focus on what are a couple of use cases that we can really go big on, assign some resources to that, but we still have enough resource to really keep the wheels turning in the current business. So that is going to take time. That isn't an overnight journey. That's that's years long journey to really build up that base of productized solutions to the point where you can get rid of quite a lot of your handle cranking. I think, Chris talked about this before as well, which is really worth reiterating, is you need that analytical mindset in the business. So not necessarily coders, but you need people who are insight driven within the business. If we're going to start building solutions rather than the end product of insights, you need a team of people in the business that can actually interpret that. They know what questions to ask. They know how to sort of dig into that data. So that takes a bit of time as well, just to get your stakeholder teams set up and ready. And that sort of upskilling is really key to make sure that your stakeholders can use those tools independently. Otherwise, if they're having to come to you every 5 minutes with questions, it's not really an efficient model, and you end up not really moving away from what you're trying to avoid, which is that sort of daily need on another team. And I think as well, it's not just a change in terms of skill sets. There's a change in mentality as well. So being prepared to wait a little bit longer to get a more robust and future forward solution takes a bit of a mindset shift from what has been sort of the previous method of analytics, which is I want this and I want this now. I'm not prepared to sort of sit around for it. So there is a bit of a mindset change in terms of how you operate, and that does take a bit of time to get people used to. And also just some of the processes, we tend to use an agile methodology. Some of those processes and forums and how people get work into the funnel does change, and I think that takes a bit of time to get people used to those ways of working, which are different from what they've experienced in the past.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Sean, how have you seen that with other customers?
Yeah, sure. I think even just from my own personal experience, I once was an analyst who was, churning out, as you described there, Laura, reports, dashboards, weekly parts, ad hoc reports, and not really having that headspace to actually understand what the data is actually trying to tell me, what are the insights that we can garner from it. And I think this approach that we're discussing here, is really beneficial. And I've seen it across other organizations that, some that are in, really high pressure trading periods. I think especially around the fact it's Black Friday tomorrow, and you must think about some of the analytics teams in some of those retailers that are having to deal with really fast paced environments. And being able to kind of move away from that traditional reporting where actually they need real-time insights on a daily basis and over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think from other organizations, a lot of what I see is around that mentality shift being really important. And I'm really intrigued, Chris, in terms of how you've kind of helped manage expectations upwards, because I'm guessing initially the value and speed of the reports that you were receiving previously would have slowed down as we moved across to this new way of working. Like, how did you find kind of managing upwards with regards to that?
Yeah, it's a good point. And as I said at the start, I'm probably one of the more fortunate cases in the business that, as I said, we had the analytical capability in the team to get to the answers if we needed them. Admittedly, it was probably a bit slower and clunkier than it could otherwise have been with some of the tools that we now have. I think the reality is in a lot of these situations, our norm was that setup. So managing up the way was probably easier than what you maybe described there. I think everyone knew that it took a while to get answers to certain questions. So if anything, we're really showing them the benefits of the new setup as opposed to the challenges with what we had before. And it's just helped us immeasurably in getting answers quicker from a kind of trading environment perspective.
Yeah, so demonstrating value quickly has kind of won a lot of favors in the business. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just speaking of demonstrating in the business, and I think Laura touched on it as well. So when she was talking about some of the observations that we have, ownership, there's a shift in that. Who are the owners of showing and demonstrating business value, but even ownership of then the product itself. How does the governance work, and what changes does that bring to empowering the business to take ownership of the product moving forward? Will, you've probably got some experience with that.
Yeah, sure. So we have made that shift within Tesco Bank, and it's, I think, a key enabler to making this kind of analytics as a product way of working really work in practice. So what we've done recently is all of our pricing models and infrastructure, everything that Chris and his team consume, now are completely owned by Chris. So what that means is that he has ultimate accountability for any decision making around any of those decisioning products. So whether a model is needed at all, when something is commissioned, when it's decommissioned, if and when it needs redevelopment or some kind of maintenance. So Chris has absolute accountability for that, but obviously we in analytics are still a key partner in that, and essentially what happens is that he outsources to us the build and maintain of those products. So Chris, you've got a really great car analogy, I think, that helps to bring that to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an analogy we use quite often internally when we're trying to describe this to some other business users. But essentially, as Quill's described there, it's almost like my need is, look, I need a car. I need to get from A to B. And based on my requirements today, I only need a 3-door car because it's just me and my partner. So I'll go out to analytics and say, this is my requirements, this is what I need. So they'll go and build that car for me. The key thing is they hand that car back to me. I own it. It's mine to manage. It's mine to run. I can top it up with petrol. I can pump the tyres up as and when I need to. But over time, what I might find is I need to take that car in for its annual service. I need to make sure it's MOT'd. And that's where I'll then turn back to the analytics function just to make sure it's working in the way it was designed and it's continually calibrated and fine-tuned with the data. But then times change, requirements change as well. So, I've talked about a 3-door car, and suddenly I might find myself with a family and I need a 7-seater car. So that's when I then go back and say, look, actually my requirements have changed. I need something new. So that's where we can start the process from the beginning again.
That's a great analogy. It really works. Just leaning from that then, if in a short, sharp way, I guess, from everybody on the call, we can go in rounds. Maybe Gul, I'll come to you first. What has been the biggest change then of actually you being the owner for both Tesco Bank itself, but the teams and the analytics teams and your individual departments as a consequence of the fact that Chris is now the person that owns the car and outsources his services?
Yeah, so the main change is that decision making, right? So what hasn't changed is that it's a partnership between Chris and his team and the analytics team. So that kind of real sense of collaboration and that relationship that we've built up over a number of years, that absolutely hasn't changed, right? What has changed is whose name is on the top of the the kind of ledger in terms of ownership. So actually, it's mainly in that decision-making piece that the main change has happened with Chris. One thing I would like to add is a key kind of element of the success of this model for me is that the analytics team needs to have a really strong engineering capability. So within Tesco Bank Analytics, we're blessed with a really talented engineering team, because obviously if you're building toolkits and various front ends which the business is going to consume insights from, you need an engineering capability that can build those things in a way that's production ready and is robust. So having that engineering capability is an absolute must.
Yeah, that's a brilliant outcome and a point actually for people considering the shift themselves. Sean?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that, Glo. I think you're 100% right. The foundations that a strong engineering team provide is absolutely critical. But I think that the theme I'm hearing across throughout this whole webinar is definitely this collaboration, keeping those communication lines up, making sure that, in traditional worlds, and I've been in this situation before where fingers start getting pointed when certain reports haven't been produced on time, whereas this model completely eradicates that. We're all working as a collective. But yeah, definitely the strong engineering foundations is a significant part of this, which potentially could get overlooked when focusing on the shinier parts of the car rather than the wheels and the chassis, etc., to use your analogy, Chris.
Laura, do you have anything to add in terms of the outcomes that you've seen or the changes?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we've definitely seen with a sort of moving to more of a productized view of analytics is just it gives us a lot more agility. When you build something well and you build it right from the start, actually adapting that and growing from it is just gives us a lot more agility than constantly having to set up new reports. Which, as Chris said, often the requirements change. You don't need a 3-door car anymore, so there's a lot of just throwing things in the bin. Whereas we have a mentality: we build something that we know we can adapt and we can improve on in future. So that gives us greater agility with those individual stakeholders. But what it also does is we can build things that can be shared by other stakeholders as well. If we build a solution that enables us to dig into our customer behaviors, that might be useful for our pricing team. It also is useful for our marketing team. It might be useful for our risk team, because those kind of customer behaviors, although they might dig into that data in a slightly different way, the core of those insights are quite usable for many teams across the business. So I think there is a real piece around gaining that efficiency across the business, that rather than building those individual reports where there might be a credit risk report, there might be a pricing report, you're building customer insights capability that can be used in a multifunctional way. And we've already seen that there are things we built for the pricing team that can also be used by our finance team, because they have slightly different needs, but ultimately they're trying to answer the same types of questions.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, because you're actually not just talking about speed to market to address the business need that's there, but also scalability and reusability across the organization, which in itself is really powerful, isn't it? Sean?
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like a marketplace, isn't it, where people can come in and access what they need from there. And, a common issue I see across various different sectors is people getting different answers to the same questions. So this approach helps eradicate that pretty quickly and, as I say, gets everyone collaborating and working together.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point around streamlining as well. Singing off the same hymn sheet is definitely something we all see benefit from, isn't it? Chris, did you have anything to add to that? And if not, I'm going to go to our final wrap-up question, I think.
I don't think so. I've spoke about it at the top of the call in terms of the benefits we've got from it. So I'd just be repeating myself, to be honest.
Brilliant. Well, why don't you go first then in answering my next question, which would be just very finally, what lesson or advice would you have then for a data leader starting this journey to move from analytics as a service to analytics as a product?
What I would say is spend time defining your requirements at the beginning and working closely with your analytical partners. What you can tend to find is you can jot down very quickly, I need X, Y, Z to answer an immediate question, but actually if you can very quickly find actually in a few practical examples, I might need this as well, and I might need this, and I might need this. So work together, be really clear on the requirements so that the end product is able to be used in a multifunctional way.
Great, brilliant. Gwyl, what about from yourself?
And I can see actually there's a couple of questions in the chat that maybe this will answer as well, is that if I was starting this journey from scratch, where I would start is to start small, right? So choose one stakeholder who's friendly, who's open to shifting mindsets and shifting ways of working. Find a single use case, a single piece of insight that has high impact and that is suitable for turning into a repeatable process. Ring fence then a couple of developers to go after that problem, to build a solution for that stakeholder, for that single use case, and use that then as a springboard, right? So that single use case, although it's small, can start to prove value and allow you then to build advocacy and to build momentum for this. So to set up what sometimes are called this investment treadmill. So the idea is that you do one use case, you prove value, and then you use that to go back and get some more investment to do more use cases. So you're setting up this kind of treadmill mentality. The other thing I'd add is that you can use open source tools to do this kind of thing. Within Tesco Bank Analytics, we use R Shiny quite extensively. It's not the only tool out there, but it's open source. It's relatively cheap, right? So it's not as if you need a huge amount of investment in terms of big shiny technology to make this kind of thing happen. Open source tools are available out there that are relatively cheap.
Yeah, that's fantastic insight. Thank you. And especially the treadmill analogy. I really like that. Cars and treadmills, though. I think we might be putting people onto the wrong thing. Laura, do you have?
Yeah, so I was actually going to say the same as Gwyl, but I have a couple of other things as well, given he's stolen my answer. We didn't agree on answers before the the question began. So I think there's a couple of things. I think leading on from the point around getting buy-in and focusing on starting small, working with some friendly stakeholders and building something small and sort of taking your time. I think there's, really there's the great question in the chat around how do we create the capacity to make the shift when teams are stretched. That is a constant issue, right? And I think we always assume that other businesses don't have the same amount of resource limitation that we do, but having worked in many companies, like it's the same everywhere else. It's always the challenge. How do you create the new? How do you be revolutionary when you're just trying to keep the cogs turning? And I think what I'd say to that is there isn't an easy answer. It's really ruthless prioritization and having to make some really difficult decisions about stopping things that not necessarily aren't valuable. They just fall a little bit further down in terms of the chain of priority. So we focus on, we have categorization of priorities, right? We have our business critical things that absolutely need to be done, and they need to be done today. Otherwise, the whole business is going to completely fall apart. We're going to get regulatory fines and that level of criticality. And then you have, your medium category really needs to be done, but probably got a little bit of wiggle room. And then your lower level, maybe less of a time constraint. We've had to really just focus on that top criteria and the sort of some of the middle category. The third category, we've had to really stop a lot of those nice to haves in order to really do this. It's not something that you can do alongside business as usual and just give the same level of service. So I think there's a real piece around getting that, investing in that culture and that strategy early, getting the buy-in from senior leaders that look, that there's going to be some things that have to stop to do this, but what we'll end up with in a few years is a much more robust business. But you don't get that without a cost, unfortunately.
Yeah. As someone who heads up a delivery department and is constantly talking to clients then about how you deliver success, you said something really interesting there that I think would be valuable if you had some insight on it. Ruthless prioritization. How do you go about aligning that across multiple stakeholders across an organization, especially when, as you said, analytics as a product impacts and can benefit so many people?
It's not easy, I'll say that. So how we operate as a business is we have a fairly fungible team. So we have a team of people that covers credit risk, commercial analytics, customer analytics, builds our control. So it delivers to a lot of different stakeholders. And obviously every stakeholder thinks their work is the most important, their work is the most critical. I know Chris is nodding. Obviously, Chris, we know that your work is the most important out of all the stakeholders. But seriously, that everybody thinks their work is the most important because obviously you're invested in your area. So having those discussions, it can be tricky. It can be very, very tough discussions. We can have some very, very hard conversations, but we have to go into it with complete transparency and honesty. And what we ask from our stakeholders is be honest with us about the value and the need for this work. Don't just say it's really important, well, what does it mean? What will happen if we don't do this? Are we going to get a huge regulatory fine? Are the regulators going to take our license away? Are we going to detrimentally impact our customers and potentially have that impact on our customer base, which we really want to avoid? What is the impact? What is the scale of that? When does it need to happen? Because often something is very important, but does it need to happen today? Can it happen down the line? I think just having those conversations very openly and honestly and being transparent. So we say our two mantras are ruthless prioritization and ruthless transparency. We tell people when we can't deliver something, we say exactly what else we're going to do. So there's no, why don't you have time to do this work? What else are you doing? They know what we're doing. Our roadmaps are published. They're open. The work that we're working on, it's very transparent. Our PI planning, our stakeholders are welcome to come to it. They can see exactly what we're working on and they can input into that. So I think that's the key thing, is just being really open and honest about what you can do and what else you're doing if you're not servicing that stakeholder.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm very conscious of time, and unfortunately I didn't get to get Sean's insights, but we will share them and any answers to any of the other questions that were raised after the session. For now, I'd like to thank everybody that joined us. I hope we've given you some really good insights about things to consider when you're making a shift from analytics as a service through to analytics as a product. And then very much thank you to everybody who joined for the panel. So Gwyl, Laura, Chris and Sean, hopefully it was a really good half an hour spent sharing some insights, and thanks everybody outside of that who joined the Q&A.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Take care all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.